when the clock struck 4 p.m. on Tuesday Eastern Standard Time, signifying the start of the new NFL season, man, did chaos ensue. And I mean complete, utter chaos. You had two players retire, Jake Locker, Patrick Willis. Eagles trade Nick Foles. And what surprised me the most was the New Orleans Saints traded away Jimmy Graham. And that is definitely a head scratcher. But there were plenty more transactions that took place. And all that free agency movement literally broke the internet. There were so many different trades, signings, re-signings. It was just overwhelming as a football fan, but also exciting. But already after day one of free agency, I can't lie, I wish the season started next month. Welcome back to the Best Damn Sports Blog. Back again this time to talk NFL with you guys because we know free agency has officially started for the 2015 season. And there's been a lot of crazy trades, signings, re-signings that have been surprising, and even retirements. But I want to get into the Seahawks trading for Jimmy Graham. The Seattle Seahawks, who were just in the Super Bowl and won the championship just 2 seasons ago. Those Seattle Seahawks have traded their center Max Unger and their first-round pick in this upcoming draft to the Saints for tight end Jimmy Graham and their 2015 fourth-round pick. And as soon as I read that this trade was official, my jaw just dropped and I just scratched my head. And I was thinking, like, what is Drew Brees thinking right about now? His best weapon is gone. Yes, he has a new center that will help his offensive line, but Jimmy Graham? Do you all know how many touchdowns Jimmy Graham has scored in the past 4 seasons? 46. Yes, Jimmy Graham has 46 receiving touchdowns over the last 4 seasons. And there ain't no replacing that for Drew Brees. Drew Brees is still going to be a top quarterback next season, top 5 most likely, but without Jimmy Graham, we are going to see him struggle. That was one of his #1 targets at all times, not just even in the red zone. I seen him hit Jimmy Graham down the middle for 40-yard touchdown passes. So this is a huge loss for Drew Brees. And not to mention the Saints are coming off a down year where they finished 7-9. They were pretty much mediocre all year. Their defense wasn't good. And even Drew Brees had a down year relative to what we are used to seeing from him. And without Jimmy Graham next year, you got to think it's going to be a struggle year for Drew Brees. And the Saints' window as contenders for the Super Bowl, they may have just closed by trading away Jimmy Graham. Now for the Seahawks, man, was this a great trade, and I think it was a much-needed trade. We all know Seattle lacks receivers, and although Jimmy Graham isn't a receiver, he can be set up in the slot and utilized as a receiver, and he's very effective in that role. But to have a player that you can go to on those 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s, that you know is going to catch the ball, who's reliable, such as Jimmy Graham, that is going to be key for Russell Wilson in this Seattle offense. It also opens up the play action. So this is a dynamic pickup for the Seattle Seahawks. Jimmy Graham is a dynamic player. It opens up their offense, gives them a lot more options. And I think we will see the effect immediately of having Jimmy Graham on their offense. I mean, just check out these stats. Over the past 4 seasons, Jimmy Graham has had 355 receptions. All of the Seahawks tight ends over the past 4 seasons have 205 receptions. So that's 150 more receptions for Jimmy Graham than all of the Seattle Seahawks tight ends over the past 4 seasons. When it comes to receiving yards, Jimmy Graham has nearly 2,000 more receiving yards over the past 4 seasons than all of Seattle's tight ends. And when it comes to touchdown catches, he just has 27 more than all of Seattle's tight ends over the past 4 seasons. 27 more touchdown catches. So there's no way you can tell me that Jimmy Graham will not have an instant impact on this Seattle team. Russell Wilson has never had a #1 receiver, a go-to guy. And yes, Graham isn't a receiver, but he's definitely a go-to guy. He's 6'6", can catch the deep ball. Russell Wilson is best at the deep ball. So this is a match made in heaven. Well, at least in the passing game, because the critics would point to that Jimmy Graham isn't a great blocker, which is true. But I don't think Seattle cares. They didn't trade for him to be a run blocker. They traded for him because he's a dynamic receiver / tight end, and he's the best tight end in the game behind Rob Gronkowski. So if you add the second best tight end in the game, that's definitely going to improve your offense. And Jimmy Graham had a down year last year, but a down year was still 889 receiving yards with 10 touchdown catches. I doubt any Seattle wide receiver had 889 receiving yards last year. So even in a down year, Jimmy Graham is better than what Seattle has at receiver. Not to mention he is going for over 1,000 yards twice in his career and has even had a season in which he caught 16 touchdown passes. And one other thing I want to mention is, in red zone efficiency, Seattle ranked 20th last season. Since 2010, other than Rob Gronkowski, Jimmy Graham has the most touchdown passes in the red zone. That's not a coincidence. They needed to improve their red zone offense as well as their offense as a whole, and Jimmy Graham, he will do so. But overall, I love this trade for the Seahawks. It shores up a weakness, and it also gives Russell Wilson a weapon in the passing game. And following that horrific loss to the Patriots in the Super Bowl, just a crushing defeat, I love to see that Seattle is still pushing to be the best team in the NFC by getting Jimmy Graham. I think they are on paper right now the best team in the NFC. We know how stout their defense is. They just shored up their offense. NFC, they better watch out. This team is going to be scary with Jimmy Graham. Oh, and I can't forget that beast mode is coming back. Man, these Seahawks might just be on their way to a third straight Super Bowl appearance.